Imagine a quiet Philadelphia neighborhood suddenly engulfed in flames, a massive plume of smoke that is visible for miles. May 13th, 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department made headlines when they bombed one of their own neighborhoods. So join us today while we discuss the 1985 Move bombing. And I'm your host, Country Boy, and this is One Mic Black History. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. But without further ado, let's get started. At the core of the MOVE organization was John Africa, who was born Vincent Leap Hart. Interestingly enough, though, John Africa was almost entirely illiterate, so he dictated his philosophy to a social worker named Donald Glassy, who helped him write what every MOVE member called the book, which was essentially their Bible containing all the teachings of John Africa. So what they believed was, first and foremost, at the center of everything was the principles of life and truth. John Africa argued that modern society was corrupt, unnatural, full of lies and violence and needless suffering. In his view, everything created by man was tainted, leading to all kinds of issues: war, disease, violence, environmental destruction, the list goes on. One of the key MOVE beliefs was this radical natural living. They rejected anything they saw as artificial. MOVE members only ate raw foods because, as they said, nature gives you food raw. They also shunned modern medicine and even household conveniences. The kids weren't given diapers or toys, and everyone, even the children, sometimes wet naked to toughen their skin and absorb vitamin D from sunlight. Animal rights was also central to MOVE's ideology. They saw all life is equal to humans, animals, plants, and humans. They rejected the idea that people were somehow superior to animals, just as they rejected the idea of the racial hierarchy. Members fed stray animals, protested at zoos and pet stores, and even demanded the release of caged animals, drawing parallels from zoos to the history of Black enslavement. MOVE was also fiercely against what they called the system, meaning the government, schools, and pretty much anyone of authority. Instead, avoided utility bills, tapping into water and gas lines, and refused to send their children to public school, which they considered brainwashing. Some of their core mantras were, do your work, meant staying true to the MOVE's cause and never surrender. Going to jail or getting beat up by the police wasn't seen as a defeat. Instead, it was just another part of their mission to resist and challenge the system. MOVE members never struck deals with the police or pled guilty no matter what. In the early days, MOVE lived in a big rundown house on North 33rd Street in Philadelphia's Powelton Village. At first, they had all the usual comforts: electricity, furniture, and even TV. But as MOVE embraced John Africa's teachings, they stripped away everything they thought was unnatural. The furniture went and replaced by sleeping bags. The walls were scraped clean of lead paint. Dozens of dogs ran loose. Daily life was disciplined, early morning exercise, sometimes running around with bricks to build up their endurance, and working together at their car wash. At night, they were spent in long meetings about natural law that were always led by John Africa. To show their unity and commitment to John Africa's vision, every member took the last name Africa. Understanding his beliefs and their lifestyle is crucial to wrap your head around. Why MOVE clashed so severely with Philadelphia authorities? MOVE often clashed with neighbors and the Philadelphia police, not just because of their radical protests, but their way of living. For years, residents complained about piling of trash, human waste, a rat infestation, dozens of dogs, and more than that, people said that MOVE blared loud, often profane political messages over bullhorns at all hours of the night, even on Christmas morning, making it hard for anyone to get a good night's rest. Some neighbors accused MOVE of threats, intimidation, even physical assaults, and were disturbed to see that some of the children were rummaging through the garbage, running across rooftops, and were never seen at school. These complaints kept coming into City Hall, leaving the community frustrated and desperate for some type of government action. From the Move's perspective, though, they were victims of constant police harassment and an unfair racist media campaign that painted them as criminals or as a cult. Ramona Africa, who survived the 1985 bombing, insisted that they would have been treated differently by the city if they weren't black. Move believed that their loud, unapologetic protests, profane or not, were necessary to spotlight issues like police brutality, wars, and pollution. They argued that they were simply informing people of the wrongs that were being inflicted on life. And they saw themselves as truth tellers, fighting for justice, even if it meant upsetting the neighborhood. To defend themselves, Move built fortifications at their home. At their first commune on Powelton Village, they erected a huge wooden platform in front of the house, a kind of stage and a shield where members would shout at the police, exercise, and live their daily lives in full view and relative safety. They kept windows boarded up and maintained around-the-clock lookouts, intense standoff with police. After relocating to Osage Avenue, Move then took things even further, building a literal fortress. They constructed 2 bunker-like structures on their roof, reinforced with timber and metal, complete with gun ports that overlooked the street and a menacing presence over the entire neighborhood. Tensions reached a breaking point in August of 1987 in Powelton Village. Police arrived to evict Move, responding to complaints about the filthy condition and the noise and unpaid bills. They used high-pressure hoses, a wrecking ball, and a cherry picker to force the members out. So then a violent shootout erupted, and a Philadelphia police officer named John Ramp was killed. Move argued that it was friendly fire, but 9 Move members were convicted of third-degree murder and given lengthy prison sentences. The national media showed the police brutally beating up one member, Dilbert Africa, further inflaming tensions. The house was then demolished and police swiftly cleared the scene, destroying the evidence. Move also showed a defiant approach to the legal system. They demanded to represent themselves in court, using the proceedings as a means to promote their beliefs, and often refused to show up at all. From their point of view, jail times were all simply part of the struggle. After the 1987 shootout and the imprisonment of the Move 9, the group moved to Osage Avenue in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood, into a house owned by John Africa's sister. And then complaints from neighbors started all over again. Unsanitary condition, the blaring of bullhorns, and escalating confrontation. The city, led by Mayor Wilson Goode, chose not to immediately act, hoping to avoid another violent confrontation. This hands-off approach allowed Move to reinforce the home, and tensions kept mounting. By the beginning of 1985, exhausted neighbors took their complaints public, even reaching out to the governor and the media. That pressure finally forced the city's hand and set the stage for the explosive confrontation. Mayor Goode would shift his strategy, and he approved a plan for police to remove Move members from the house and serve arrest warrants for a long list of offenses like parole violations, illegal weapons possession, making terroristic threats, and contempt of court. The threats posed by this confrontation were so dire that authorities decided to evacuate all of the surrounding homes. Residents were told that they would be able to return in 24 hours. On the morning of May 13, 1985, nearly 500 police officers and city officials surrounded the Move home. Authorities cut off the building's water and power, and at 5:35 in the a.m., Police Commissioner Gregory Sambor got on the bullhorn and said, "Attention, Move, this is America, and you have to abide by the laws of the United States." Move members were given 15 minutes to surrender. Inside were 13 people, including leader John Africa. No one within the building came out. Within minutes, gunfire erupted, and the standoff turned into a gun battle that lasted for more than an hour and a half. Police fired over 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Water cannons and tear gas were used, but Move refused to surrender. By the afternoon, the city had escalated. from a helicopter. The police dropped 2 bombs made from Toivex and FBI-supplied C4 explosives on the rooftop bunker. The explosives set off a gasoline-powered generator and ignited the roof. At first, firefighters were told to let the flames take out the bunker and force move to surrender, but the fire quickly spread to the neighboring row homes, and fearing more gunfire, police and firefighters held back instead of putting out the fire. The inferno raged for more than an hour and a half and wouldn't be brought under control for nearly 12 hours later. In the end, 11 people inside the move house were dead, 6 adults and 5 children. Only Ramona Africa and Birdie Africa survived. 61 homes were destroyed and nearly 250 people lost everything. The event shocked the country and left Philadelphia with a grim reputation as the city that bombed itself. The courts eventually held the city responsible for excessive force, awarding millions of dollars in damages to both the survivors and the residents who lost their homes. Investigations later slammed the city for dropping a bomb on an occupied residential area, especially knowing there were children inside. Still, no officials were ever criminally charged. It wasn't until 2020 that the City of Philadelphia City Council formally apologized, declaring May 13th as a day of reflection. But the trauma for that day was still felt, especially by MOVE members and families. The pain resurfaced in 2001 when it was discovered that the remains of some of the children killed in the bombing were stored at the University of Philadelphia and even used for online courses. Mike Africa Jr., who left the organization before the bombing, said that they were bombed and burned alive, and now you want to keep their bones. The 1985 MOVE bombing left a painful mark on Philadelphia and forever branding it as the city that bombed itself. The tragedy still haunts the families of MOVE members and the wider Black community in Philadelphia. So why does any of this matter? Remembering MOVE's story is vital. It is a reminder that the consequences of state-sanctioned violence and the importance of truth in the ongoing struggle for justice in America. The MOVE bombing is critically important, and although it's often overlooked chapter in Philadelphia and America's story, it is a stark reminder of racial tensions and the heavy cost of failing to address injustice. Thanks to Mike Africa Jr. and others, MOVE's story is being preserved not just as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to survival, resistance, and a radical vision of protecting life. This struggle remains vitally important to American history, and it is one that we should never forget. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy. This is One My Black History, and this is the 1985 MOVE bombing. If you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemikehistory.com. I also have a new Substack. You can check that out in the description below. I would love to see you there. I would like to thank all my financial contributors. Without you, none of this could be possible. I love you all. Peace.